Why do people tell stories? Stories have the power to move, transform, and even reform people. Storytelling is an art that has been around for centuries. Ancient civilizations used paintings to share stories. This rock painting, more than 30,000 years old, traces the existence of human life in India. It depicts childbirth, religious rituals and rites, deaths, and burials. Fairy tales originated from the oral tradition. Depending on the storyteller's culture and background, certain motifs changed. In each new stage of civilization and new historical epoch, the symbols of the tale were endowed with new meaning, according to the needs and conflicts of the people within the society. Even though fairy tales have existed for thousands of years, it was not until the 17th century that it was recognized as a literary genre. The term fairy tales is from French word les contes de fées coined by Madame d'Aulnoy. The stories were mostly written for the upper-class elites. The importance of the fairy tale as a source of cautionary cultural instruction has long been noted by scholars. Notice how the female children look scared? The fairy tale is a particularly fruitful space in which to represent the needs, fears, and desires of humankind. You remember this scene from Disney's cartoon, don't you? Did you know that Walt Disney did not invent this tale? Little Red Riding Hood was written by Charles Perrault in the 17th century in France. It is one of the most popular fairy tales in the world, and also one of the most retold tales. So what makes this tale so interesting to literary critics, poets, advertisers, writers, and folks like you and me? Beneath her simple cloak, she embodies complex and fundamental human concerns. Like family, morality, growing up, growing old, the tale explores the boundaries of culture, class, and particularity, what it is to be a man or woman in a particular society. Folklorists are more interested in tale-type analysis. Psychoanalytic interpretation, for example, looks at the wolf as humanity's animal instincts, and specifically man's instincts to haunt women. The wolf in this illustration depicts the hidden desires of men attempting to seduce and control young innocent women. The feminist interpretation looks at the role of women in a patriarchal society that restricts female sexual development by making the women the object of male sexual desire. The feminist analysis highlights the male author's audacity to portray women as naive beings who are unable to tell the difference between a grandmother and a wolf. Feminist criticism also looks at how the plot calls for man's power to subdue the evil. Women are dependent on men to rescue them from danger because of their innate weakness, both physical and sexual. The socio-historical analysis focuses primarily on the culture from which individual variant comes. Even though the basic plot structure remains intact in most variants, there are some elements that are modified by the writers. At the heart of any variant, we notice that there is a little girl or a young woman who is pursued by a stranger portrayed by the wolf. Several scholars have pointed to the werewolf trials and witch trials, which were happening in this period both in France and Germany during the 17th century. Fears gave rise to the tale like Little Red Riding Hood to caution children against men who act like wolves or wolves who act like men. The literary genre of fairy tales flourished during the reign of Louis XIV. The tales were not written for children, but for the upper-class nobility. Men and women gathered in a women's salon to read one another's stories. The tale serves to warn young women from the dangers of inviting strangers to their homes. In Germany, Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm's version of The Little Red Cap reflects German culture during the 19th century. The concept of children's literature did not exist before the 19th century, but the Industrial Revolution and mass exodus from the countryside to cities gave rise to urban middle-class families. Children became newly visible. The defeat of Napoleon in 1812 gave rise to German national pride. Grimm's wanted to revive and rekindle German culture by collecting the precious tradition of the German folks they called natural poetry. They continued to edit the collections exclusively for children. The goal was to make the tales fun, but also effective so that they served as a manual of manners. The 19th century Victorian England adapted the Grimm's version of the tale and rewrote it to reflect their ideology. Notice how the red cap from Germany has been changed to a red cloak and hood, that English country women wore during that time period. Emphasis was placed on a middle-class young child whose virtue was threatened because she disobeyed her mother. Powerful female sexuality of the 17th century and childish innocence of the 18th and 19th centuries are replaced by a more humorous plot in the 20th century. The grandma's house became the bordello, the innocent girl a stripper, and the evil wolf a harmless whistling dog. Tex Avery modeled his heroine on the pinup girls who raised the morale of World War II soldiers. The retellings of Little Red Riding Hood in the 20th century are more subversive in nature, in that the writers questioned every aspect of traditional tales. In Roald Dahl's poem, the role of the victim and the victimizer are reversed. When threatened, she pulls a gun from her underwear and shoots the wolf. One can look at the effect of gun violence among children during the late 20th century in this version. Angela Carter's retelling, The Company of Wolves, deals with the issue of gender in our postmodern society. Neither the wolf nor the Little Red Riding Hood is a victim. They define each other's sexuality. The ending of this tale blurs the boundaries of a man and a woman, civilization and wilderness, and humanity and bestiality. The 20th century film Freeway, directed by Matthew Bright, follows the tale's plot. The heroine is a juvenile delinquent chased by a sadistic pedophile. The film treats the aspect of women's prison life, physical and sexual abuse of female children, and the gang mentality, all prevalent during the 90s. Today's Red Riding Hood is seductive yet armed with self-confidence. She has the power to dominate the predatory wolf just by shushing him. I hope this presentation on theoretical frameworks and its cultural implications helped you better understand fairy tales and their interpretations. Next time you read one or watch a readaptation, think about these theories. Thank you.